Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down to talk about Xbox's long, lingering problem. It's no secret that Matty loves JRPGs, and I know I love them more than most. Nowadays I'd say it's pretty fair to state it's my favorite genre, and it's growing faster than ever before. When you look at a titan like Final Fantasy 16, it's so exciting to see what that genre has become. Originally known as the small ball 16-bit only genre, has become so much more, and I'm thrilled about it because it's now a lot more mainstream than it once was. There were the days people would fold their arms and go, "Ha, weeb." Not as much anymore, though proudly I am a weeb. However, Xbox has missed out on a lot of that fun, specifically during the Xbox One generation. And today we're going to talk about how there's been a lot of inconsistency with JRPGs over on Xbox, specifically today's topic circling around one company. I think it's fair to say that nowadays, Xbox is doing better than ever in Japan. They're making the right strategic partnerships, like one with Hideo Kojima. We're seeing them do the best they've ever done since the Xbox 360 in the terms of selling consoles in Japan. And that's really important to note because the 360 was the only time they did generally good in Japan, selling over 1.5 million units, and they are currently on pace to break that. On top of that, they're actually getting a decent amount of JRPGs onto the platform. For example, they got Wo Long day one on Game Pass, they're getting Eiyuden Chronicles day one on Game Pass, but they're also just being a part of the team. I've always said that Xbox doesn't need to play the exclusive game, they need to play the put on your jersey and say, bro, I'm on the team, where are my JRPG teammates at? And get them just onto the platform. And we've seen that. They've managed to court Sega quite well, might I add, where Persona is finally here on Xbox. Yakuza has been on Xbox for a while, and I think Game Pass is responsible for a lot of that series' growth. You also look at other JRPG series, big and small. For a big example, Tales of Arise made its way to Xbox, but on a smaller scale, we got Digimon Survive, and many more others. Xbox hasn't been perfect. For example, Mega Man Battle Network Collection isn't coming to Xbox. This really chaps my ass because I love Battle Network, and the fact that it's only coming to Switch, PC, PlayStation, a story that us Xbox fans and Defining Duke listeners know all too well. We sit there and go, why? Why is this happening? But there's one company that we ask that question with more than any other, and it's where the whole conversation is going to be based around in today's video, because indeed, we are talking about Square Enix. Now, Square, no doubt about it, has had their ups and downs, but they are the JRPG gods. They are responsible for some of the very best and most popular Japanese games, and there's no doubt that if Xbox can get their consistent support, that it will elevate their platform in a region they're trying to grow in. The problem is, there's been such inconsistencies in Square Enix's practices, and it's really hard to nail down why things are going this way. What do I mean by that? We're gonna get into a topic where yet another JRPG has missed the platform, and it feels like, while it's to many just another JRPG, many Xbox fans are starting to get fed up, where I'm noting replies on Twitter are starting to fill up, websites are starting to cover it a bit more. Square Enix's neglect of Xbox is becoming more and more mainstream. So let's have a conversation about it, ladies and gentlemen, shall we? If you're new here, you're into Xbox news, information, conversations, you're in the right place. Please consider subscribing. With that, let us begin at the top where all of this started. So there was a nice JRPG that came out exclusively to Nintendo Switch last year during the summer called Live Alive. It is a remake of an SNES classic in Square Enix's HD 2D art style. One of my personal favorite looks for a game nowadays is this one, and I support any game that does this. I know they're remaking Dragon Quest III this way. They just dropped Octopath Traveler 2, which is currently my game of the year and is phenomenal. This art style rocks. That blending of nostalgia and modernism works so well for me. Now, Live Alive went on to sell exclusively on Switch 500,000 units. This was really awesome to note because this is about the most niche thing that Square Enix has put out when it comes to this art style, and they absolutely made money on it because they celebrated the sales of the series. Octopath Traveler 1 surpassed 3 million sales, and while some have been kind of down on Octopath Traveler 2 sales, I don't think we actually have the exact proper data right now because it's only accounting for specific regions in physical retail. I think it's doing better than others are giving it credit for. Time will tell on that. But with Octopath Traveler 1, that is a game that did extremely well on Nintendo Switch, and when it got ported, it was brought over to Xbox first with Game Pass as well as PC. Strangely enough, it never came to PlayStation. Why is that weird? Well, it's not because of the relationship there, but when Octopath Traveler 2 rolls around, many Xbox fans saw it and went, certainly it's coming to the platform. You brought the first one there. It's not. It's coming to Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, and PC, but never Xbox. Really, really weird behavior there. So many Xbox fans are accustomed to this treatment from Square Enix where they just happen to pretend they don't exist. Okay, maybe it's one of those. But now the situation is repeated again. So Live Alive came out in the middle of last year. It did pretty well. And now in April, it's coming to PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, PC, but no Xbox again. And I find it absolutely perplexing. And I wanted to break down the scenario around it because I've seen a lot of, we'll say, infactual arguments being made about Xbox and their Japanese presence. And I think a lot of folks are quick to hand wave this away when it's very important that Xbox gets this support for, I think, the big dogs to do well on your platform and to continue supporting your platform, your Tales of Arise, your Personas, and so on and so forth. You need the supporting acts, if you will, and I mean that with no disrespect, because to me, last year, one of the main acts was Live Alive, but for many, it's a supporting act, and I understand that. But these are games you want to have on your platform. It's how you create that JRPG culture, where you can guarantee, like, you go to the PlayStation storefront and you go, okay, they're going to have everything big and small. There's an expectation there. With Xbox fans, it's still far too dodgy to really ever count on it missing the platform. Is Xbox to blame for this? It's really hard to point a finger anywhere, but what I want to do is start off by breaking down some of the arguments. First off, I'm seeing a lot of arguments saying Xboxes don't sell in Japan, therefore Live Alive can't come to Xbox. And based off currently roughly deduced statistics, there's about 15 million Xbox Series consoles out right now. And to me, that's a pretty high user base that, based off the engagement we saw with Octopath Traveler, is ready to play these types of games. Based off the support we've seen for Persona 5 Royal and other JRPGs, are ready to dive into more of these types of games. But according to a lot of people online, no, Xbox fans don't support these types of games in Japan specifically, and therefore Square Enix could not make a Live Alive Xbox port. And I find it just strange because this is a worldwide game. It's going to be available everywhere, not just Japan. There's no doubt about it that Xbox is getting smoked in Japan when you compare it to PlayStation and Switch. No doubt about it. But they're growing there. I think that's important, but that's not the main statistic Square is going to look at. They're going to observe the Western audience, where Xbox predominantly runs strong, and see, oh, there's a lot of users here though. Why wouldn't we bring our game there? I think this is where the harsh reality may come into play. A lot of people think that ports are snap of the finger, just happens. And comparatively speaking to a lot of other things in game development, it could be something you consider a lot easier. And I think you'd be forgiven for having that mindset. But there is a lot of testing that gets involved in SKUs, and it's not as simple as just plugging in a controller and it works. There's much more that goes into it, that you have to tune it to the specific system it's going to be releasing for. And it's why you're seeing a lot of developers scale down, or even say Arcane, when they said that there was a PS5 version, which by the way Xbox tried to poo-poo. We'll talk about that more later, but Arcane seems quite thankful they had one less SKU to work on. Developers will take what they can get when it comes to that stuff because it's less strenuous on the team, and it is unfortunately not as simple as you'd imagine. So what I would wager a guess is happening here is Square probably looked at the Xbox user base and said, yeah, there are a decent amount of fans here that would probably buy our somewhat niche JRPG that we're staggering the release for. And that's great. But we know for a fact that PlayStation and Switch fans definitely will, based off data that we have, such as Octopath Traveler selling 3 million units exclusively on Switch, plus recent data they most likely have with Octopath Traveler 2 that sort of skews things in the direction of, well, let's support that first. That is my guess, because it will cost money and manpower to make that Xbox port, and I think the tough pill to swallow is Square Enix just doesn't want to fund that kind of stuff, and they're a weird company. Let's bring up an obscure game Square Enix released that you probably don't know about. Paranormacite, The 7 Mysteries of Hanjo. Really cool visual novel horror game that I have been playing. Published by Square Enix, by the way. I heard nothing about it until some reviews popped up just last week, and I thought, this looks amazing. I gotta try it out. It was only 15 bucks, like a small indie style game. No marketing whatsoever on Switch, phones, and PC, but no PlayStation, which is a console they often support, as well as Xbox. Nothing's there, of course. The consistent thing here is no Xbox, but the point being with Square Enix is they're consistently inconsistent. They're in places that you'd often expect them, like, oh, Final Fantasy on PlayStation, but with something like Paranormacite, you look at it and go, well, yeah, PlayStation, right? No. Why not? I don't know. It's hard to tell. My guess is because it was on phones, it may just work well for your handheld device like the Switch. It would, but why PC then? It's tough to wrap your head around, and this is the confusing part about SKUs and the internal components of game development that unfortunately we as consumers, we as fans, are just not privy to. That said, I don't put all of this out here to diffuse your frustration. The frustration is completely legitimate and 100% earned, because you cannot count on Square Enix to show up on Xbox platforms. A lot of folks believe that PlayStation is paying off Square Enix to not support Xbox. I like me a good conspiracy theory. I find it tough to believe that we're going to take this niche JRPG series that's getting a late port to PlayStation and PC, by the way, and they're going, yeah, we're going to pay to keep this off of Xbox. Stranger things have happened. Maybe it did, but I really don't want to lend any credence to that. I find it hard to imagine. Now, something like Final Fantasy, I think the writing is clearly on the wall. With Final Fantasy 14, the biggest MMO on the market, and Yoshi P saying something along the lines of, we don't have the assets to make an Xbox port. I find that tough to believe when, these MMOs are all about getting an engaged player base anywhere, and I think Xbox would help them out a lot. I do think there's a little bit of writing on the wall when it comes to series like that, where clearly it would be in Square Enix's best interest to do something like bringing Final Fantasy 14 to Xbox. But here's the other reality that Xbox fans are going to learn about as their exclusives start to be delivered, is that exclusivity provides a artificial level of importance to your game. Like, I am of the mindset that Octopath Traveler 1 did as well as it did because it had the excitement and hype of a Nintendo Switch exclusive behind it. Of course, it's a fantastic video game, but I think that hype drives something because there is that degree of FOMO that kicks in, and when it starts to get ported over to your Xbox, to your PC, then it's that, oh my god, I gotta get on that. And that is the monetization of a single player game right before our very eyes. You have the exclusivity bag, you cover the development fees to the best of your ability, maybe even go into a profitable state if you get enough of a bag. Then you take the Game Pass bag over with Xbox, you bring Octopath Traveler there, you bring it to PC, now you're getting more sales, more excitement, and suddenly this game that was only supposed to make, we'll say, $5 million has now bumped up to potentially 10, maybe even 15. That's maybe a little bit ambitious of a thought process, but the point being is this is how Square works. They try to get blood out of a stone, pretty much. And so they will stretch out the release process for these games and begin with exclusivity in a timed format and gradually port things over and maybe secure bags and different deals all over the place, because what we always call Square Enix on Defining Duke are the mercenaries of the games industry. We thought that they were going to be good buddies with Xbox when the first ever third-party day one Game Pass game was Outriders. But now we look at it and we go, that's Xbox's worst enemy, a mortal enemy no less. I mean, they just don't support the platform at all. but they can make one move and suddenly they're back in the fans' good graces. Again, it goes back to what I said, which is Square Enix is consistently inconsistent. And I get Xbox's fans' frustrations. There really isn't a answer here, but it definitely deserves attention. And I'm not too quick to point the finger at Xbox here, because it seems to me like, again, the mercenaries at Square Enix have recognized maybe they went to Xbox and said, we'll bring Live Alive there if you give us $2 million with the Game Pass deal. And they went, we're not paying that much for it. And Square went, okay, you don't get your port then. And Xbox has to shrug their shoulders and go, it would have been nice to have, but we're not going to pay an arm and a leg for you when you're a game that may sell 100,000 units or so on our platform. And I think that would be fair of Xbox. You don't want to overpay for something, and then it may just end up never coming to the platform. I think that may be and that's all speculation, by the way, but if that were to be true, a hidden negative of Game Pass, that a company like Square will just outright not bring the games over to the platform if they don't get the Game Pass bag, because that's secured funding. That's why devs love Game Pass, because while many people have tried to act like it's going to end this industry, it's in fact making games exist. But in this case, it could have been a possibility that it made it cease to exist in the terms of the port. We'll see. I hope that Square eventually has a just breakout moment and brings Octopath 2 to Xbox, that brings Live Alive over to Xbox. But nonetheless, it is incredibly frustrating to see them continue to skip out. I really, really hope that the behavior turns around, because I think Xbox fans are supporting JRPGs. We're seeing legitimate growth over on the Japan. We're seeing legitimate growth in Japan. Game Pass looks like it's steaming towards 30 million subscribers. I mean, it's a strong ecosystem with people ready to try and buy. So what's the holdup? We can only guess, and these are just some of my suggestions. So I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts down below. What do you make of what's going on with Xbox and Square Enix? Please do fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.